Welcome to the Prove It podcast, where we let go of proving to the world and start proving what's possible. I'm your host, Michaela, prosperity coach, purpose-driven entrepreneur, and woman of faith. This is for the ones who dare to prosper differently, who choose calling over conformity, purpose over pressure, and alignment with divine design over hustle culture. Through honest conversations and transformative stories, we'll explore what happens when you stop chasing approval and start becoming who you were always meant to be. Because your worth isn't up for debate, but how you live, that's where you prove it. I am so excited to have Jennifer Anderson on with us today. Hello, Jen. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michaela.
So tell us more about what you do.
Yes, for sure. So first of all, as a personal brand strategist, I work with leaders and owners of businesses who really want to build a great reputation. So I help them to determine what their personal brand is, because newsflash, everybody, y'all got a personal brand? You do. So I help you to determine that. Let's make sure we know what it is instead of like hoping people are going to figure it out. But then let's go grow it as well. And so then that way, it's not just something that you know about, but how can you leverage it? So there's a lot of thought leadership work that I do with people, but with the business leaders and the business owners that I work with, a lot of them want to do things like get speaking engagements. They really want to do a better job with growing their business. So think leadership. And then there's another element too, that sometimes they want to do things like start a podcast or a YouTube channel and whatnot. And so it's so easy nowadays with tech to make that happen, though I just help them kind of slow down for a second, back it up. Let's start with the end in mind, where are you going with things? And then that really ties back to their personal brand, because then when you're clear on your brand, it's actually a lot easier to know how you want to show up when you're out there and you're doing things and you're really building that reputation. It's been fun work to do. I'll tell you what, I've been doing this stuff for about 16 years, and it's actually kind of nice that people know the phrase personal brand now. I'll tell you, when I first got started, back in 2010, people like what brand? Huh? They didn't get it. And so it's nice that it's a little bit more of a universal concept that people understand. But I'm there to come alongside, be that strategist with them and help them have more success.
I love hearing about it because it just seems so fun and rewarding, and it's so important. And I love that you help people recognize that everybody has a personal brand. I feel like it requires you to be confident, right? How did you get started with all of this? How did you discover this? And how did you become, because you really do exude this confidence because you know who you are, you know your personal brand, you own it, you know how to step into that and show up.
Yeah, absolutely. So going back 5,000 years ago, no, I'm just kidding. But basically, when I came out of college, I worked in the recruiting industry for about 11 years. And in that time, I talked to upwards about 100,000 people. These are job seekers. So people I get on. So if you're familiar with recruiting firms, these are like temp agencies, recruiting headhunters, right? So a company says we need to fill such and such position. The recruiter finds some resumes. They submit it over to the manager and say, hey, do you want to talk to these candidates? And so I was the recruiter, kind of that middleman, if you will, to help pull those pieces together. So what would happen is I'd get on the horn with a bunch of job seekers and I'd be asking them questions like, what do you want to do? Tell me what's most important to you. So Michaela, I'm not even kidding. I would ask in every single candidate, I would say, what are the 3 most important things to you when you're looking for a job? I can't make this up. People would always say this. They would say, I want to make more money. I want benefits. I want to be close to home. And I'm like, wah, wah, duh, hi. Okay. Sure, you get it. But as I started, I'm like, okay, good. What else? Let's talk about, and people would look at me like I'd lost my marbles. Like they could have a what else? I can ask for more than that? I'm like, yeah. Do you have a desired industry? Do you have a type of manager that you work really well with, or types of managers you need to avoid? Things like that. And there were so many people who were like, I didn't even realize that I had choices. They just would have this blank look on their face of what? I can actually be somewhat in control. I'm like, yeah, you actually can. You can, and so what came from it was this reality that I had, that in my role of straddling the fence, if you will, talking to all these hiring managers, right? Talking to all of these job seekers. And then I'd have the same conversations with the hiring managers. Like, what are you looking for? What's important to you? Does the person have the skills? Do they have, the college degree, right? Okay. That's a whole conversation for another day, sister. Like,
I would have that conversation with you.
yes. Okay. We can get into this. Okay. So they have experience. They have the college degree, right? Do they have good references? Like, yes, they're fun. Like, why would I present a candidate to you that's not going to check the boxes? You know what I mean? On core things here. Okay. And so, but I would say, okay, what else are you looking for? What are you trying to do? Like, where's your company going? What are you trying to do with the team? These kinds of things. And they would look at me like I lost my marbles. Like, what? I need to think about this when I'm hiring them. Yes, you need to think about these kinds of things. Where are you headed? Like Covey's 7 habits of highly effective people. One of the habits is start with the end in mind, right? And so if y'all haven't read that book, get the book, read the book. It's like the quintessential self-help. It's been around for 1,000 years. Anyhow, not that like, I don't know, like 40 years. But anyhow, the point is this, that here I'm straddling the fence. I'm talking to hiring managers. I'm talking to the job seekers. Both of them were like, oh, I actually have some choices. I actually can make some decisions here. I can be thoughtful about what I do. I can actually think it through and then ask for that, right? And so how I got to helping people with personal brand is that the whole concept crossed my path, if you will, late 2009, early 2010. And that's because I had just started my consultancy, where I decided to walk away from doing recruiting full time and instead focus on being a coach and working with coaching leaders on who are you hiring and hiring the right people and coaching these job seekers. Okay. So to me, that was a really easy next step. So talk about confidence building, right? Like start where you're at and just go like one little step forward. Don't like jump over the ocean. Come on, people. Like when you're going to have a heart attack and be in an anxious ball of mess, you know what I mean? Don't do that to yourself. Just like, what was the next logical step to do? And so anyhow, just through research and reading lots of books, I'm always constantly just like, what's the news out there around career development stuff, leadership development. And so that the concept, specifically the phrase personal branding, showed up in my world. And I realized as I was reflecting back on those 100,000 job seekers that I talked to over 11 years, they didn't know their personal brands. They didn't know what they stand for. They didn't know that mark that they want to put in the world. They don't know the legacy that they're trying to build through their work, right? So many of them were stuck in this place of, I got a mortgage, I got to feed my people, and I need benefits. So I just need a job. I just need some money coming in. And any of their life satisfaction, desires, any of that emotional stuff, it was like they completely let it go. So anyhow, so as I got into the coaching with people, it was very, very clear to me that that was a foundational concept. People need to know their personal brand, because if they don't have that foundationally, the rest of it's absolutely going to fall apart. So, and then that has just evolved. So when I started my consultancy in 2009, I just knew in general, I'm going to help people to build better careers, because what I had been seeing also, even from the managers, there were several of them that were just like, this sucks being in leadership. What am I doing? And so even to help them, it's like, okay, it doesn't have to be bad. You don't have to be in that camp of like, everything's just horrible all the time. And so it's been really interesting to see how the personal brand is that foundational concept. Then they build upon that. Oh, it's beautiful. It's beautiful. Because then they wake up in a totally different way, because they're like, oh, this is what I'm trying to do. This is the mark I want to make in the world. I'm like, good, let's go do that, right? And then help them to be that light on a hill. Go be that.
Yes. Embodying that confidence, having that foundation, knowing who you are and where you're going and what you want. I do kind of want to open the can of worms. I'm so curious just because of the way you brought it up. I kind of want to go there. What's your stance? What's your view?
Okay, so here's the deal. I cannot tell you how many times I've had conversations with people who are like, I got to figure out my career stuff. And I'm like, and they're going, I got to go back to school and get another MBA. And I'm like, time out. No, please don't. Stop. Right. And so, because a lot of times people that find their way to me are like 35 to 50 years old. They got enough experience under their belt that they're looking back on their previous life path. And they're like, if I keep doing what I was doing, if I keep doing that going forward, I am going to be a mess. I can't stand this anymore, right? But they're also at a crossroads where they're like, they're biting their nails, like, what do I do? What are my options? And a lot of us go back to what we know, which is what our parents told us at the dinner table, which is go to college, get a degree, get yourself the job. It was not horrible advice. I'm saying it's not horrible advice, right? But when you get to a point where you got some experience under your belt, going back to school, the way how we used to do it is extremely difficult. A lot of us are married and have kids and have a mortgage. And, if you're doing any kind of volunteering in your church group and your community and all the things, hello, we do not have the ability to just unplug and be like, see y'all, I'll be back in 4 years. I'm going to go be a co-ed again at the university. It doesn't happen. Okay. And so then it's adding university stuff on top of that enormous pile of to do. And it's the reward for the benefit for all of that time and effort and money is not very high at all. You might remember back in 2008, there was a recession that hit because of the housing market. Okay. And so when that hit, there was an enormous amount of people who got laid off, specifically men who had earned an MBA. There was a whole ton of them because they were working and they had gone back to school and they gotten that MBA and they did like the nighttime MBA kind of a thing, right? Because they wanted to advance. Okay, because that's what they thought. In order to advance, I've got the MBA. And so there was just so many. It was like this bloated amount of middle management. So companies looking for a quick way to reduce payroll. The fastest way to reduce revenue is to eliminate your payroll. You'll see it everywhere. We're seeing it right now in the business world. Right? Tons of people getting laid off. So you have all these people who are like, wait a minute. Was told if I go get my MBA, I'm going to be good. I'm golden. Like I'm going to stay at that company or retire, or maybe I'll make a job change. But it's going to be my ticket. It isn't, and it wasn't, right? And then there's too much evidence that shows where people who don't even have college degrees are starting amazing businesses, right? So many of them that are doing it. Usually it's because they get to a point and they're like, yeah, I don't need all of that from the university. That meaning, here's your curriculum, here's your syllabus. I don't need that to go do my business. I've got this great idea. It's like more that tapping into, again, speaking of confidence, tapping into, I see something that needs to happen in the business world. Let me go solve for it. Let me go solve that and make that difference in the world. And I don't need to have a college degree to do it. So I had a very interesting conversation with my uncle who does have an MBA. He's a retired executive from the company provides like car insurance and roadside assistance. Found out this was back in 2009. He found out that I was starting my consultancy and I was going to do leadership coaching and stuff like that. And he looked at me and he said, how are you going to do that? You don't have an MBA. My favorite uncle says this to me. And I'm like, what? Like, it didn't even cross my mind. I'm like, people don't, like, uncle, people don't hire me because I have an MBA. They bring me in to help their teams because I help leaders connect with their employees better. They do a better job of retaining the right talent.
You get the results.
I get the results. Yeah. Right, exactly. And he's like, but he was like, he had hung his own hat, so to speak, on the, you got to have the MBA hook, right? And so, and he thought he was mentoring me by saying, you need to go back and get your MBA. And I'm like, no, I don't. I really don't. And nobody ever has said, and in the evaluation process of bringing me into a team or working with me individually, nobody has ever said, tell me about your MBA. Like they don't ask about that, right? I mean, that's my own experience, but there's a lot of other people out there too, that it's, if you are leading your life by way of, here is my resume, here are my certificates. If that's what you're putting first out there, then you're going to attract that. You will absolutely attract.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I'm glad that I opened this can of worms because I am getting so lit up by this conversation. I think this is actually a really important concept for people and women to hear. I love where you talk about the resume and if this is what we want to show people and this is how we are defining our worth, we're trying to prove I'm good enough. I'm worthy enough because of, look at my accomplishments, look at my resume, look at, the things that I've done. Your uncle doing that and saying that to you probably wasn't personal at all. He's just it's handing down what has been taught over these generations, right? And so it's like, it's the system. And so do you think that the system instills in us that we need to prove our worth by accomplishing, by doing it this way?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Absolutely. And I'll say yes, absolutely. Underlined, highlighted, italicized, and bolded the whole bit. Yes. And here's the reason why. You want to know why? Because typically the people who are running a business, okay, so we're talking the vice president of human resources, okay, a director of operations, the president, the general manager, the chief technology officer, the chief finance officer, right? So we're talking like all the big titles in a company, right? Almost universally, they have all earned a degree, an advanced degree, okay? And so there's a bit of self-preservation, okay, for them. Like, oh, I got this degree, so you need to do it too, right? Okay. And so, so there's a self-preservation. Also, there's the, life gets really hard and complicated sometimes. Okay. I mean, seriously, we just done like meal planning for a week. Like this can bring a lot of us to our knees. I'm just like, oh, all right. So, forgive the sarcasm, but you know what I mean? It's like, okay, now I got to think about dinner and I'm also like solving world peace. Okay. And so, but what happens is in our brains, the more we can simplify things and put some kind of a structure and system around stuff, the easier it is to just move through the pieces. So that's why, like, having like manufacturing, like we're creating a widget and we're going to do the exact same widget and we're going to make 10 million of them in blue and then we're doing 10 million in red or whatever, right? And so same thing happens. We're trying to widgetize people. I just come up with a new word. It might be a new word.
That was really good. So I'm going to use it.
Okay, good. So in order to widgetize people, we're like, you got to get the degree in order to get the promotion, right? Because that's what the person above them is saying that they need to have. However, most of the founders of companies, most of them do not have an advanced degree, but they hire people to be in those exact, like the vice presidents of whatever, senior vice president or whatever, those different roles. Again, think finance, tech, HR, operations, sales, marketing, etc. Those people will typically have a degree. And those are the ones who are making the hiring decisions. So then it just trickles down. And so it's easier for them to differentiate. I've got two great people on my team. This gal over here, she's gone and gotten her MBA. This person over here hasn't gotten their MBA. We're going to promote this person because they've done more. And so even though quite possibly the person without the MBA could possibly even be better. So, but it's an easy way to widgetize. It's an easy way to differentiate people, and we do it. I don't even think that there's so little that people do when they're in college to connect with other people. So when I was brought in to be an executive MBA, or to be a career coach for the executive MBA for Brigham Young University. Okay. All the classes, they're teaching them how do you read P&Ls, which is profit and loss statements. How do you plan for risk? How do you do strategy? All this kind of stuff, whatever. There was zero, Michaela, zero on who are you and how are you building your executive presence? Zero. And so the dean who was over all of that stuff, he saw me speak at an event and he reached out and he's like, I kind of need you to come be our coach for all of this. And so these were people, again, executive MBA. They are going to school. It was like a Tuesday, Thursday night thing or like a Friday, Saturday, like because they're working full time. Again, they're married, they got kids, they got the house payment, church service, all the things. And so he's like, here at the university, he's like, we're doing a horrible job of teaching people how do you manage your career and building your brand and, that executive presence, like they were not doing it. And a lot of them were like, we kind of think that they were like, they thought that they were there because most of these students who were in the program were like, again, 35 to 50 years old, going back and getting their MBA. And so it's like, there was like this, like, you should know how to speak. You should know what you're like, no, people, they don't do it because they're busy trying to get through their workday, get home, get Jimmy to violin, get Sally to soccer, like they're not thinking about their career development. So when I was brought in to help them and I would ask about the other classes and different things, there was nothing that was going on for career development at all. It was all about how can we measure these students, okay? How do you measure them? You give them a grade, right? At the end of the, so it's like, here's a test. Here's a very expensive P&L for a globally run whatever company, and they had to go through it, and then they either did it right or they did it wrong, right? And so they got the grade or they didn't. It's way too hard to measure somebody's brand. So that executive MBA program, they weren't teaching them. So I came alongside of them and helped to support that effort. For higher education, a lot of times they're like, if you get this degree, you're going to get the next job. And it's getting harder and harder for that to be proven, unless you're like in the top 15. And have you looked at those MBA programs? It's like $150,000 that you're paying for. So not a lot of people can do that. That's a very unrealistic differentiation. And so, but even at that level, you're going to go work in a company where it's just reinforcing that widgetizing of people. So it's it's unfortunate.
I'm curious what advice you would give to, like, I'm just thinking of myself. I'm thinking of moms who feel called. I'm very passionate about helping, moms who feel called to do something, women who feel this calling to do something more, and yet they get stuck because of what we've been taught in society, right? Of, oh, well, that means I'm going to have to go and get some kind of degree, when really, okay, let's be honest. My doctor, I hope he has a degree, right? Like, there are going to be careers that, yes, a degree is the right way to go, but is it always the right thing? And how do you get past that?
Yeah, right. Exactly. I think that none of us are going to go back in time to being a child, right? Where we can sit down with our parents and be like, hey, mom and dad, I need you to really instill confidence in me, because like when I'm 33 years old and I'm trying to do this business thing, I'm going to have a whole bunch of imposter syndrome. Hi, newsflash, we can't do that. That would be amazing, but we can't. Okay. So going forward, anybody that's within our purview, let's do that, right? And the more we normalize the conversation around, okay, you may not be great at this, but you're great at this. Let's invest in this, right? So when I was in school, I almost got held back from going to 4th grade because I didn't know my multiplication tables, okay? I was 9 years old, Michaela. And as a 9-year-old, I was like, problem. I have a calculator.
We all use our phones for that.
I know. And now we have our cell phones. And I'm like, I didn't even have a cell phone back then. I was like, what's the, like, I was so like level-headed. My mom's like, you were like the nerdiest, weirdest kid, right? But I was like, what's the deal? But you know who it was a deal for? My family is a family of engineers. My family, they know math. They know science. And you got little Jen coming along, da, 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 right? I'm entertaining. And I'm great at telling stories, and I'm really good at gathering people and making people feel seen and heard and all those kinds of things. They're going to be like, who is this little crackerjack kid? What is going on? Right? So, well, yes. I mean, they were like, yes, go be nice, do the kind thing, be a friend, that kind of stuff. But when they look at my report card and I'm like failing math, 3rd grade, like, the world's on fire. Our kid's going to fall behind, and all this kind of stuff. No. And nowadays, the kids have to learn how to use their cell phone, right? And all their fancy calculators and the T1, whatever, all these kinds of things, right? They're taught so that they can do advanced mathematics.
Yeah.
Okay. What I'm saying is that, what are you good at? When you know that you're good at something, then lean into that. It's kind of like gardening, right? Are there certain plants that you really want to see grow in your garden? Give them the energy, right? Weed the other stuff out that you don't want. Give it the fertilizer, give it the water, give it the sunshine, right? Put other complementary plants around it that's going to help, okay? And so that's what I think we need to look at for ourselves. And we're not going to get it from other people necessarily. Can you hire a coach or a consultant? Yes, you totally can. Because sometimes we're so blinded to our own drama. Holy moly. You know what I mean? Sometimes we need somebody who's outside of us. And that's where coaches and consultants are fabulous, because it's not our significant other. It's not a family member, right? There's none of that other background baggage. In fact, earlier today, I was doing a training about the power of habits, and there was a husband and wife that happened to be part of it as well. And I was saying something about accountability partners. And I'm like, do not have your spouse be your accountability partner. The husband looked at me. His eyes were like the size of saucers. Like, what? And at the end of the training, I said, what was your big aha? And he's like, that you said that I can't have my spouse be my accountability. I'm like, great. I'm like, she's your co-parent. She's your lover. She's your friend. She's your playmate. Like, do that. don't have her hold you accountable. Like, that's why you hire a coach. You know what I mean? Like different, things. I'm like, so anyhow, but where I'm going with it is that if you are in a place where you're struggling to move, just take that next step forward, you just need somebody outside of you who's going to help you, who's going to give you that support. But that's again why I'm always recommending, don't have it somebody really close. Like, don't choose a best friend, right? Like, let that be the person you go get pedicures and sushi with. Like, do that with them. You know what I mean? You need those people in your life, but who's that person who can help hold you accountable, kick you in the rear a little bit when you need it, right? And then and get you moving forward. And then those little steps forward, you're going to continue to grow and to have that confidence, because a lot of that stuff that was from our childhood, right, that's still showing up. Like me with math, I'm like, what? It's funny. I'm 50 years old now. I'm still talking about what happened to me when I was 9.
We just can't let go of it. It's fine. So do you think you've always had this confidence because you are confident? Like, is that something that you think you gradually built? Is there a moment when you feel like, oh, this is when I found it? Or do you feel like you've always had that?
One thing my mom was really good at was she taught me to act like this is what she would tell me. She would literally say to me, you act like you have somewhere you need to go. Okay. And so she would say that to me because I always had long hair with braids. And she's like, you're going to get kidnapped. Someone's going to grab your hair and like yank into a van. It's way to go, Mom. Way to like make me so scared. You know what I mean? But what she did was she's like, I don't want you to be scared. I want you to live in your life. But she's like, I want you walking around with your chin up, acting like you got somewhere to go. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So little Jen, in her little outfits. I used to dress up like Holly Hobby. I was such a nerd. Anywho, so I just like my little flower dresses and off I go. And so, but to this day, I will be going through a grocery store. People come, they're like, hey, where's the mayonnaise? And I look, I'm like, I'm there with like my kid, my backpack purse, my shopping cart. I'm like, I don't know. And I look, I'm like, well, it looks like it's on aisle 12. They're like, okay. Anyhow. But and they're like, oh, don't you work here? I'm like, no. And they're like, oh, you just act like it just seems like you. I'm like, I know, because I act like I'm in charge, So there's a little bit of that was instilled for me as a child. But I was actually a pretty nervous, anxious kid. I was really embarrassed to raise my hand and answer questions. And I'll never forget junior year English. My best friend Sharon sitting in front of me, your rows of the chairs and tables. She turns around and she says to me, Jen, raise your hand and answer the question. Because part of our grade was how many times we raised our hand and like said stuff and added. Because it was like we'd read like a book and then we'd have to like contribute to the conversation in the classroom. She's like, you know what this book is about? It was so funny. I will never forget her turning around and her gorgeous blue eyes piercing my soul saying, raise your hand. I'm like, okay, I got it. And then I answered and the teacher's like, good insight, Jen. Who else? And I'm like, I didn't explode. Holy cow. So perhaps we all need a Sharon, right? Somebody who's just there with those piercing blue eyes saying, just raise your hand, just try it once. You're going to be fine. So I think that kind of stuff definitely helped. And then when I went off to college, I decided I didn't want to be that shy, embarrassed kid anymore. I didn't. And so I had that pivot opportunity of like, all right, new school, new group of people. What am I doing? And so I really just started growing from there. And then I also had to wrestle my demons, Michaela. So like when I was 14, my dad died by suicide. And I didn't want to be that kid in 1989 whose dad died by suicide. Like it was so rare and so taboo. I mean, it still really sucks to this day, but it was like, what? People don't know, right? They're not sure. They don't know how to handle those kinds of things. And so, so there's some of those things I was talking about wrestling demons, right? Like some of it, you kind of have to come to a point where it's like, it is what it is. It was my dad's decision. Okay. That's not me, right? And so I do think as relatively intelligent, cognizant adults, we need to stop and recognize and say, okay, what's not serving me anymore and what can I leave behind? And I have a huge testimony of the atonement of Christ. and helping us with that kind of stuff, because a lot of it we can't do ourselves. And here we are trying to bucket up and pull up our, our boots by our straps, like do the whole, it's like, no, like if we got deep hurties, you got to deal with the deep hurties, because if you don't deal with it now, it's going to rear its ugly head later, and it is totally going to sideswipe you and can cause some massive issues. So instead of trying to hide it away and pretend like it's not there, get the therapy, right? Do the stuff that you need to do. And there's so many different modalities of how that can look. But I think it's more the vulnerability of raising your hand and saying, I got some hurts and I don't want to be defined by these hurts anymore, because I got something I want to say in the world. And quite honestly, the more we can talk about our hurts, the more it normalizes it. And, I don't want to talk about the fact that my dad committed suicide. I don't talk about it all the time, but it helps people to go, wow, okay. It's not like I just popped out of my mom and was like this uber confident person. Like I've had to deal with some demons, some issues. And that's just one of the things that I've had to deal with. But it's, I think that there's an element of, okay, is it no longer serving? And as I'm moving forward, what is it? And then what can I replace it with? Because once you created an empty space, nature abhors a vacuum, something will go in it. So you have to fill it with something good.
I love that so much. So I'm curious, do you have a book, a mentor? It could even be a scripture, something that you really, really love that has changed your view. What is that thing for you? You mentioned the book, 7 Habits, right?
Yeah, 7 Habits, great classic book for sure. Still so good. A scripture that I come back to time and time again is Psalm 46:10, which is be still and know that I am God. The reason why I like that scripture a lot is that I love studying the Hebrew and understanding like the deeper understanding of things as well.
Oh my gosh. Same. Right? We could have a whole conversation about that too.
Right? Well, okay. That's episode number 2 another time. Okay. And be still in Hebrew is rapa, R-A-P-A, or sometimes spelled R-A-P-A-H. And rapa means to let it go, to set it down. And so what I love about that is God's not just saying like, just sit there and be still and watch Netflix. Okay. That's not what he's saying. Okay. What he's saying is be still, just stop worrying, stop spinning on the thing, just set the thing down. I got this. Right? Just know that I'm God. Like, stop trying to carry this enormous weight, right? Imagine like the big bucket of rocks on your back of all the stuff we're trying to carry, right? He's like, no, I didn't ask you to do that, right? And so the more I've come to understand that, and I see it in different areas of my life, the more I can just rapa, right? Just said it, just, here you go, thank you, right? Creates a little spaciousness for me, emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally. I've got a little bit more spaciousness to say, oh, and over here, the Holy Ghost is prompting me to do this thing. So instead of spending all this time, literally spinning around, right, on the thing that I'm worried about, it's like, it's going to work itself out. And, I'm feeling prompted to do this. And you follow the breadcrumbs, right? And then that really helps to imbue more and more and more confidence, because you're following those breadcrumbs.
I didn't know that word. So that's really awesome. And now I'm going to go down the rabbit hole again. But it's the let go and let God. I think you just brought up such an insightful part of that, where it's not just let go and let God do everything. And then we just sit back and we're like, okay, thanks for like doing everything for me now. But now we follow those promptings and we act. We can act in that way, and act in the way that, we are surrendering and trusting. But that doesn't mean that we're now in action. We can now take action in faith in the direction that he wants us to go, instead of the spinning around and around.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. And not doing good for anybody, let alone ourselves, because we're just spinning, just that constant, we can beat ourselves up pretty darn good. And Satan knows it.
Yes.
He's going to be like, oh, here's some more evidence of how crappy you are. Oh, here's more evidence of how ineffective you are. Here's, he'll keep adding it on. Right. And so that's again why I come back to what I said earlier about really acknowledging the atonement of Christ to help us, right? He's there at the table for us whenever we want to show up, always.
The world wants us to prove our worth. He has never asked us to prove our worth.
Right.
That is inherent, that exists, it is unconditional. There's nothing you can do to change that. He does ask us to prove other things like obedience and faith, things like that, but never, ever our worth. that is what Satan wants us to do and get stuck spinning our wheels trying to do that.
Right, exactly. He's like, I got my checklist. Have you done this? Have you done this? Until you do all that, you can't. You're not worthy, like
It's the resume. It's
right,
okay,
exactly.
I just have to do this.
Yeah. Have you gotten your MBA?
Oh my goodness, I love this so much. Okay, so I want to know what is next for you. What are you excited about?
Well, hey, so a couple of years ago, I was awakened at 3 o'clock in the morning and God asked us to move from Utah to Missouri. And within 32 days, we had sold our house and bought a house and we moved we were in Layton, Utah. So for those who are not in Utah, that's like half an hour north of downtown Salt Lake. So we moved from there over to Independence, which is really close to Kansas City. And people looked at us like we were nuts, like we had lost our marbles. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know, but I do know this. I'm going to go and do because the Lord commanded, right? And so I'm just going to be obedient. Like we'll figure it out. And so since then, we were there for a couple of years and now we've moved down to southern Missouri and we bought 8 acres. And in fact, I think I just heard our rooster crowing outside. So that shows up on the recording. Everybody, that's Butch, our rooster. He's a beautiful animal. And so we have chickens and dogs and cats and a bunch of land. And I think we're going to do a pig next year. Like I'm super excited about like that. My daughter's like, we're not going to eat the, I'm like, we're eating the pig. I'm going to raise something to 500 pounds or whatever and not eat it. Right. And so I'm excited about like that season of my life. I have a very, strong desire to create a space. And so we have about 6 acres of woods and I just started building a meditation trail through the woods. And I had a client here at the property recently, and I do a VIP day with my clients to kick off our work together. And anyhow, thankfully she was in the area so she could come here to the property. Partway through the VIP day, she used the meditation trail and went walking through it and spent a half an hour chatting with God about her business. And I was dying with delight. I mean, talk about delicious to my soul. I'm like, yes. So I love that this is happening, that this is here. For many years, I've had this thought of, I'd love to have some property. I think it would be so cool to do stuff. But now to see it, like it's starting to come together very, like really, really, really beautifully. And what's great is I get to marry this whole idea of like land and, getting back to earth, if you will, with personal brand. And you might be thinking, what on God's green earth does that have to do with, whatever. But the nice thing about it is that we're creating this space here that when people really want to do a deep dive on themselves and they're really ready to lean into, like, I want a different career, I want my business to look different, then we've got this space here that I can create that. But I can back it up with all the business sense and all the accountability, all the other things that goes with it. So it's just a really fun and beautiful season for us. And then just to see the 9-year-old running around. In fact, I checked on her before we did our podcast interview, and she was dressed in a dress that kind of looks like it should have been like a comforter in 1982, like big flowers. She's running around like she's Laura Ingalls Wilder out there. And I love it. I love that she can do that. That feels good to my mama heart, just like go play, just enjoy, just try not to get a tick on you. We are in Missouri. Thank you, bugs. But yeah, so that's some cool stuff. But it's the other thing too that I want to say is I love this opportunity to talk more about our divinity. Right. And to me, the more I can engage in those kinds of conversations is really, really good because God's the best CEO around. I mean, he's got it dialed in, right? We just need to check in with him and to do the things he's asking us to do. So I love what you're doing here with Prove It.
Thank you so much. And it just is so inspiring that you have this land, you have this opportunity, and instead of just keeping it for yourself, you are sharing it and you are being generous in that way and being a good steward of what God has blessed you with. All right. I've got 5 rapid fire questions for you. Beach or mountains?
Beach.
What is a dream that you haven't chased yet?
Okay. I really want to hike the Camino to Santiago. So it's part of the medieval trails through Europe, going back like 1100, 1200. So it goes from across northern Spain, from France all the way over to the western side of Spain. So I haven't done it yet, but I totally want to do it. And we've got passports in place. And the goal is when my daughter turns 12, we're going to go do it as a family.
Oh my goodness. Okay, yes. That's incredible. If you could only listen to one song for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, golly. One? you're so mean. I'm just kidding. You're not mean at all. You're just making me dial in. Okay. I Refuse by Josh Wilson. It's all about I refuse to not do the things that God's asking me to do. Like,
What is one daily habit that has made a huge impact on your life?
one daily habit? Because I have like 17. I would say it's a consistent morning spiritual routine, starting maybe early. And then part of that is telling my kid, do not come out of your room before 7 o'clock in the morning because your Christian mother is not going to be Christian. And, holding strong to that, right? So yeah, so there's that. And then like the scripture study, the journaling, like all of that kind of stuff. Because if I don't have that quiet time alone with him in the morning, or maybe at the end of the day too, sometimes it just kind of depends on what's going on. But I have to have it every single day. And until I stepped into recognizing that and doing it, I struggled a lot more it's so much easier when I keep with that consistent spiritual routine.
And if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be?
Any? Queen Esther.
Ooh, that's a good one. Why?
She's Esther. I mean, come on, right? Like, I just am so looking forward to sitting down with her and be like, sister, give me all the details, right? Like what wasn't written in the Bible, the whole bit. I love that she was so willing to tap into the power of God through fasting. Fasting is an enormous, very important toolbox in my toolbox, in my toolbox. It's very, very important to me. And so just the fact that she thought it through, decided, and she knew a tool to use, thought it through, asked to make it happen. People went and did it, and that she had faith enough, like this is going to work, right? It was her example of be still and know that I am God, right? And so it's like, just, she didn't know what was going to happen, right? She knows she's going to get killed, all these things when she goes and talks to the king and whatever else. And then it turned out to be like way better than she could possibly imagine, like all the good stuff, right? But that's the rest of the story. That's why I want to have lunch with her and be like, what else? Tell me what happened, right? Like, we don't know about her children. We don't know about other people she impacted, right? Like, yeah, Esther. She's totally on my angelic board of directors.
I love that so much. Well, thank you so much for being here. This was such an edifying, uplifting conversation for me, and I just had so much fun.
Thank you so much, Michaela.
If today's episode stirred something in you, I'd love to hear about it. Share your takeaways, leave a review, and don't forget to subscribe so you can keep uncovering what's possible when you stop proving and start becoming. You don't have to prove your worth. You're here to prove what's possible when you fully own who you were divinely designed to be. Live with faith, lead with boldness, prosper with purpose. Prove it.